Welcome to episode 169 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the past and present edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and my co-host, it's apropos since it is the month of May, former iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, a gentleman and a scholar. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great, Phil, as always. And, funny you mentioned that Indy 500 win last year in iRacing. Well, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of that. I think either the next episode, if you go by the calendar, or by, this weekend. And if iRacing had their shit together, then we would still be having the iRacing Indy 500. We would have ran the fixed edition on Friday, and then the open setup one later on this upcoming weekend, but we get into that one later, of course. But yeah, of course, good weekend and everything. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, because it was Mother's Day yesterday. And of course we had a lot of interesting things happen this past weekend here in IndyCar and NASCAR, so ready to get into it.
Yeah, definitely happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Of course, my mom, to your mom, Josh, and to all the mothers of the people that listen, and to the mothers that do listen as well. You never know. We'll get into the GMR Grand Prix of Indy, which saw Alex Palou do Alex Palou things, which is absolutely destroy the entire field. Set himself up to possibly go and do the double this month and get his first Indy 500 win. 2 years ago, he finished second to Helio Castro-Neves on his way to his IndyCar championship. In the throwback weekend at Darlington, saw Will Byron continue to kind of put himself give himself the kind of energy and possibility to go get his first career Cup Series championship with his third win of the season, largely fueled by a battle between Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson, being that they both ran over each other. We'll get into all that, get into some of them throwbacks. I mean, we talked about them last week, but seeing how some of them throwbacks worked out. The top 75 drivers of all time, so the additional 25, a good number of those were at the racetrack at Darlington on Sunday. We'll give our thoughts and maybe some of the people that were omitted and some of the people that maybe should have had to wait. We'll get into Xfinity, which saw Larson win in a late race battle with John Hunter Nemechek. Nemechek goes and gets in the wall, but isn't mad about it. Truck Series, Christian Eckes gets the victory there, solidifies himself as a championship contender in the Truck Series. The RoundUp is busy. IMSA at Laguna Seca, the Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac team has had a pretty rough go to start the year, but they were able to come out, and they even had a rough start to the weekend at Laguna Seca, but Renger van der Zande in his stint was able to go get the lead and take off to get their first win of 2023 after Porsche had started the weekend in a good position. Acura, which has been great at that racetrack over the years, didn't really have anything to show for it after the initial first stint of the race. MotoGP, their 1000th official Grand Prix, sees Marco Bezzecchi win in a Wreckfest. And we'll get into Moto2 as well. Rally Portugal, Cali Rovanpera wins his first race of 2023. Extreme in Scotland, Veloce team won the second race. X44 won the first race. Points are tightening up a bit in there. Indy NXT at Indy Road Course. They won't be racing for a while since, for whatever reason, they don't have a Freedom 100. Supercross at Salt Lake City sees Chase Sexton become a Supercross champion, basically by default, since first Cooper Webb and then Eli Tomac ate it with injuries. So we'll see what happens with that. If those guys are able to come back during the motocross season at some point. We'll preview F2, F3 at Imola, F1 Academy at Barcelona, Supercars at Simons Plains, and NHRA at Route 66 Raceway in Chicagoland. The Formula One San Marino Grand Prix, we will both go and try to call it by the 95 word title that they actually have it going for, because for whatever reason, Liberty Media insists on making every Formula One race name ridiculous. The name is longer than the lap time, and the racetrack is a joke, but whatever. We'll also talk about Indianapolis 500 practice and qualifying, go through the grid, 34 cars for 33 spots, so there is bumping, but we'll see how much aggro there really is. And then we'll talk about the Cup All Star Race and the trucks at North Wilkesboro. Make previews and picks. There's a lot of cars in the actual All Star Race already, based on winning last year, or this year so far, and then previous winners of the All Star Race. So there aren't that many people in the open. At the end of the day, if you can't earn your way into the race by winning, I don't think you really should be able to get a fan vote to get in. But I'm curious as to who would win the fan vote. Anyways, we'll take our guesses on that. Also talk about some of the memories we have from North Wilkesboro past. I think that'll be more on my side because I'm the one who actually got to watch racing at North Wilkesboro. Mainly, I have one, memory that sticks with me and will stick with me for a long time in my life and my fandom. Josh will talk about iRacing and sim racing in general in his sim segment, and then close the deal before we lead into the greatest day in motorsports edition, part 4, next week. So yeah, GMR Grand Prix of Indy, Indianapolis Road Course. For whatever reason, the IndyCar series has to race there twice a year. It's honestly a waste of time. It's not a great circuit. It's not a really challenging circuit for these drivers or these teams. But in the end, Alex Palou gets the victory, gets his first victory of 2023, wins by 16.8 seconds over Pato O'Ward. McLaren makes it a double podium with Alexander Rossi taking the third step on the podium. Christian Lundgaard started on pole, but pit strategy did not, and certain other things really didn't go in his favor. So the guy who started on pole finished fourth. Felix Rosenqvist was on the outside front row, and they were basically neck and neck at the end, fourth and fifth. Scott Dixon sixth, Joseph Newgarden seventh, Marcus Ericsson eighth, Colton Herta ninth, and Green Rehal in 10th. Romain Grosjean, who had rough qualifying, ended up 11th after starting 18th. Will Power, in a rare off day at the Indianapolis Road Course, started 12th, finished 12th. Renus VK, Kyle Kirkwood, Marcus Armstrong, Scott McLaughlin, the drivers that were on the lead lap. Only 3 cars were out of the race and only one caution. David Malukas and Stingray Robb getting into each other lap on lap 2 of the race, and then the rest of the race ran green. Pagano had to retire due to a mechanical issue. They said that they left the wheel loose, so he basically had to park the car. The two, what do you call AJ Foyt cars, had issues, which isn't shocking. So yeah, Alex Palou took the lead change. It says, wow, really? That's interesting. Alex Palou took the lead on lap 1. I guess he made a really good start because Lundgaard and Rosenquist, I think, held back a little bit. And Palou was by far the fastest car the whole entire day. His pit strategy was in his favor. And dominant performance takes the points lead by 6 over award into the Indianapolis 500. Rossi gets some good momentum with a podium. Some of the other players in this championship, I mean, you look at Ericsson, another top 10 finish, but he loses a spot in points in the process to his teammate. Grosjean finishing 11th, not the greatest result, but qualifying 18th to get to 11th. Guess you have to give him credit there. McLaughlin had a rough day. Power didn't have the best day, had one of his best circuits. But I guess the main story is Alex Palou. Talked about him winning the championship in 21, losing the Indianapolis 500 to Helio Castro-Neves in that season. He looks more like that driver, the driver from 2021, than the driver from 2022 who was in a lot of turmoil and contract disputes. I mean, we all know that he's probably going to be taking over Rosenquist's car at McLaren anyway, but still, it doesn't mean that Ganassi isn't going to go and try to go and give him the best car possible, because why wouldn't he want to have somebody go and win a championship, even if the guy's leaving? So Alex Palou setting himself up for a possibility to win a second IndyCar championship with a dominant performance, Josh, at the IMS Road Course.
Yeah, not only that, he's setting himself up for possible return to the title here this year, but also it's a preview of what could happen if he ends up going to McLaren, either in IndyCar or even in Formula One. And when you look at the results, I mean, it's technically a McLaren-dominated race. You have 3 McLaren drivers effectively on the podium, plus Rosenquist, who led 3 laps in this race. So, definitely a very McLaren-dominated day for sure when you look at it like that. But no, really, Alex Palou had really dominant car throughout the race, and he was able to make up time, wherever he needed to, and once the last pit cycle finished, he was just able to drive away from the field and have a 16-second margin of victory, which of course pretty large margin of victory. I mean, and considering how when they were cycling through pit stops, it wasn't even that far ahead of Lundgaard and ahead of Rossi and Award, but he just had that good of a car in traffic compared to everybody else, and then once you get out into clean air, it's game over from there. So for Palou return to victory lane this year, and possibly maybe this is the start of something we see here in 2023. And he has a similar performance to what he was able to do in 2021. So we'll see if he ends up being up there in the title contenders. Wouldn't have thought that would be the case. Thought he'd continue to be kind of a lame duck in a way. With especially with how he's already starting duties with McLaren. He was at Miami last week, being a reserve driver role for McLaren F1. So already beginning to take on some of those duties there. But here, still winning in IndyCar, so still showing that he's able and capable of winning races. But as far as the rest of the field, was really impressed with Lundgaard. Of course, started on pole. They for Ray Hall, they had a really good performance for him, and just didn't have the pace that Alex Blow had, but he definitely led a good chunk of laps there, and still came out with a top five finish. So good result there for him. I was also impressed with Alexander Rossi. I thought he had a really good piece too, and went from 10th to 3rd in this race. So definitely, he was somebody who was I saw he's able to make a lot of passes under braking, especially early on in the tire cycle. So he's really able to make the most of taking advantage of other drivers. When he was able, when that was possible. So it was definitely a good run there for Rossi. Of course, still kind of getting settled in terms of results and the quality of those results, compared to his other McLaren teammates. And finally, first podium for McLaren, best finish of the year for him so far. So, he's been kind of struggling at a few times this year, but this could be maybe the start of Rossi, potentially getting his first win possibly soon with this team. So we'll see if that happens. You talked about Roman Grosjean, and of course talked about him leading up to this race in our preview last week. I think he probably could have had a better result if he qualified better. Had a bad qualifying on Friday, and really was obviously really frustrated by that, but still made up 7 spots on Saturday. And if he had qualified better, maybe he would have had a chance there, because obviously it's probably one of his better tracks, better circuits. So definitely a little disappointed in that, but it's also tough to pass and things get strung out pretty quickly. So being able to go from mid pack to almost top 10 is fairly respectable in some ways. Of course, your boy Graham Rehal making some laps there, led a few laps on strategy, of course, but ended up not really working out for him there, and still came away with the top 10. So his pace similar to Christian Lundgaard there, and able to kind of use that strategy in his favor, but nothing he could really do about it compared to Palou, of course. But the rest of the field, of course, incident, first lap incident with Malukas and Stingray Robb, really the only action that occurred here. There was a little bit of action in the middle race with Will Power, but ended up finishing. Driver number 12 started 12th and finished 12th, so a lot of 12s there for him. But I agree with you for the most part. With this race. I've done the Indy Road Course and iRacing, and so I actually do kind of like the flow, I guess, that the track gives when you drive through the road course. But there's not really a whole lot of opportunities for passing. There's only about maybe like 2 or 3 areas, and the rest of it more of a setup where you have to get through certain sections, through the S's, after the back straight, the chicane before that, after where turn 1 is, where you go back into the grass area there. I don't really like that section too much because it's a hard right-hander, hard braking zone, but there isn't really a whole lot of room to set up a pass there because it immediately leads into a slow left-hand section there before you get on. We break off into the pits, and it's a kind of an awkward area to try to make an attempt because the next corner is a immediate left-hander right there, and it's not kind of like, it's got to be a way where you can set up a pass going into turn 1, right? And still have room to fight or to defend your position, or the the last corner on the back straight, before you go into the S's that lead up into that corner into turn one. I feel like they could have been better designed, or maybe they. I mean, I understand why they did it because in F1 when they ran turn one, destroyed the tires and everything, so that's probably part of it. But I mean, it probably makes for better racing if they left that corner just wide open, and everything. But I can definitely see why. And I mean, obviously this race, and I mean the history of it hasn't been very entertaining here in IndyCar. Really, I mean, I think NASCAR maybe a little bit more entertaining, but that's always because NASCAR racing on road courses has always been slightly entertaining at least.
And full of destruction as well. Unlike IndyCar, which is generally clean. That hopefully the rumors and some of the talk from this past weekend where they might move because it's going to be the 30-year anniversary next year, that they might move it back to the oval. At this point, they might as well, at least for the Cup race. They should move the Xfinity race to IRP like it used to be for so many years, unless they want to do it as a morning doubleheader with the Cup race, and then it will make more sense. So Indy 500 prep starts this week, qualifying and the whole bit. So we'll get into that later. I mentioned the points briefly. We'll give you more detail. Alex Palou at 174 points. I mentioned 6 points ahead of Pato O'Ward. Palou's teammate Marcus Ericsson is 19 points behind. Then there's a huge gap, 40 points between Palou and Grosjean, 41 to McLaughlin, 43 to Joseph Newgarden. Scott Dixon enters the Indianapolis 500 7th in points. Defending champion Will Power is 8th. Lundgaard 9th, and Kyle Kirkwood tied with Alexander Rossi, the guy whose ride he took over. Colton Herta 12th, the last driver right now to over 100 points so far this year. So points as of now for the IndyCar series. We'll get into the Cup series, of course, as I mentioned. A bit of argy-bargy late in the race at the Goodyear 400. That was basically what it was. I mean, at the start of the day, Martin Truex dominated, led 136 laps after Darrell Wallace Jr. led the first lap, led the next 136 laps of the race, and 145 total to lead the most. It was him and Ross Chastain that really dominated the proceedings, along with Kyle Larson. Those are the three best cars most of the day. But once Martin Truex lost track position, it became much more difficult for him to go anywhere. Chastain and Larson, as I mentioned earlier, got into it with each other. All that opened up to give William Byron his third win of the season, 7th career Cup Series victory, the 100th victory for the 24 car in Cup Series since Jeff Gordon won 93. William Byron, Kevin Harvick, William Clyde Elliott II, Brad Keselowski, and Darrell Wallace Jr., your top 5. Harrison Burton, Kyle Busch, Justin Haley, Ryan Blaney, and Christopher Buescher, top 10. There was 22 cars on the lead lap with all the cautions they had, 8 cautions. Only one car that fell out early in the race. It was Brennan Poole with transmission problems and put fluid down on the racetrack. Some of the accidents that happened late in the race took out a few more people, but essentially that was the only car that was out for a good amount of the race. Yeah, I mean there's some people there. Look at a lot of these drivers. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drivers scored points in both stages. I mean, you could take it. I guess my question, Josh, is, I mean, Byron wins his third race of the year. Last year, he won 2 races early in the season and basically disappeared after that for a good amount of the rest of the regular season. But he seems to have this staying power, and the Hendrick Motorsports cars are fast. All 3 of them that are actually being driven by the regular driver. I mean, even Josh Berry at times while he was driving the 9 car seemed fast. It doesn't seem to have translated to the 48. But William Byron, it's been a few years in the Cup Series. He mentioned it in his victory interview where he thought I guess he thought in his own mind that he was too young for it and maybe had been a bit immature and didn't know what he was doing, didn't know what he had to do. Also didn't have his crew chief of choice in a sense, even though he did have one of the greatest crew chiefs ever in Chad Knaus at one point. But now he has won his 3rd race of the season in race number 13. A lot of momentum leading into the All Star weekend and then racing at Charlotte, which is essentially a home game. Points standings wise, he's only 29 and 13, so he's only like 40 some odd points out of the points lead. And Chevrolet also has been dominant this year. All the multiple winners are Chevy drivers. 2 of them are Hendrick drivers. So 7 wins amongst Byron, Larson, and Busch. Then 3 of the Gibbs guys plus Tyler Reddick make 4 Toyota winners. And then the only Ford winner so far in 2023 is Joey Logano. But I guess that's what I was going to say is like, are we making William Byron the presumptive favorite, or is it too early to tell because it's only halfway through the regular season? Is it somebody else, a la one of the guys we're going to talk about here shortly, or maybe it's somebody else other than that?
Well, I mean, I think it's tough to say really for Byron. I mean, of course, yes, he has 3 wins on the season, so yeah, by wins, yeah, he's definitely a favorite. But I mean, his wins this year, well, the first couple of wins that he had this year were very dominant, right? Las Vegas, dominant. Phoenix, dominant. But yeah, outside of those races, hasn't been. I mean, he's been there, but he hasn't been quite as upfront as Kyle Larson. I feel like, Kyle Larson, of course, has been upfront, and probably, if things had gone his way, we could easily be talking about Kyle Larson on a hot streak here to start off this the season, and in the spring here, because I think he definitely could have won a bunch of races since Richmond, and so I think you could easily be talking about that. But for Byron, he's he led a ton of laps at Dover, of course, but yeah, you still want to see some more dominance to say he's really a real favorite for this title. I mean, I think he is in terms of wins, but I just want to see more consistency up front and being up there and in terms of top fives and all that, which kind of is, but he's really doing it very quietly, I guess. And so that's something that we have to start looking out for is how often can he be in the top 5 and be in the conversation, I guess. We tend to focus too much on the winners and who won the stage and all that stuff, and we kind of forget you get stage points and also people who finish in the top 5. They don't really interview the top 5 after races either. So I mean, there's definitely probably been some opportunities where he could have been interviewed, but he wasn't, and so it kind of sneaks in there as not a seemingly not a favorite, but when you look at it, maybe he actually is, and it's now fifth in points. So after this win, so um, I think he can be, but you just got to continue to be consistent and um, can't definitely can't be a like a what am I gonna say, like somebody who disappeared like he did last year. Because remember last year he won a couple of races really dominantly in Atlanta and at Martinsville last year, and then kind of fell off the face of the earth until the playoffs basically, and then he kind of was a little bit better, but then we never really heard from him. So I think he's just got to continue to win and continue to run up front, which he's done that in the past. Of course, the 1 year he was in Xfinity full time. He went and won 4 races in the title. The 1 year he was in trucks full time, made 7 wins in that series, and probably should have made it to the final four and won that one if it weren't for engine braking at Phoenix that year. So he definitely has potential to be a dominant driver in the Cup Series, but just takes Cup Series. Of course, is a lot harder. Drivers that we thought would have dominated immediately. In this Chase era, Larson, Chase Elliott, 2 examples we thought would be up there immediately, and it took them a few years to start winning. So William Byron's now won the more than 2 times now for the first time in his career. So maybe he's possibly going to go here on a streak, or at least dominate here in the upcoming months. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's something that we have to observe as we go along. I don't know if we're going to really learn anything from the All Star event because it's on a track that they're not going to race on, at least after this weekend, for a while. And who knows if the surface that they are going to race on will be the same the next time they race on it. So I think the other piece that we have to go over, though, is the Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson battle. Kyle Larson was throwing back to Tony Stewart's Xfinity win, what ended up being Tony Stewart's last. I think Xfinity win. No, it was his only Xfinity win. The only time he ever drove for Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah, Daytona.
At Daytona in the Xfinity Series, driving a number 80, and he won the 300 there. That was part of his run he had there for many years. And then Ross Chastain was throwing back to Dale Jarrett, and he took the big brown truck and Tony Stewart throwback, and they ran into each other and a bunch. And by the end of it, Ross Chastain went and got into Kyle Larson, put him in the wall, and handed the race to William Byron. I mean, there's a bunch of aggro, typical, Ross Chastain is too aggressive, this, that, and the other. He's got the woe is me kind of deal. And there's people that are into it. There's people that aren't into it. I mean, at the end of the day, I think NASCAR has become more of a circus. So having a guy who kind of has no fear and has an owner that's going to back him up, and Justin Marks. I mean, I also was thinking about this on my long ride back from work to home, and you got all these people who have never really had to drive in bad equipment, like Kyle Larson or William Byron or some of these other guys that have had aggro, like Denny Hamlin, have had aggro with Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain was a starting park guy a few years ago. Ross Chastain was a guy that nobody was saying, oh, he's going to end up finishing second in points in the Cup Series. People were like, oh, maybe he has a chance to have a career in the Xfinity Series if he gets with the right team or have a good truck or something like that. I mean, he carried – you look at how bad Nice Motorsports is, even with his protege there, who's also does the same stupid shit at times in Carson Osavar. He literally made Nice Motorsports a better organization. He carried them and was in position to possibly win a truck championship. He went and changed his point allocation from Xfinity to trucks because he thought he had a chance to win the championship. He went from losing an opportunity at Ganassi and Xfinity to ending up being employed by Ganassi, and then in turn, Justin Marks buys the organization and goes and takes the one team and takes his team 99 and the 99 team and merges it within whatever. I guess he, however that worked out, but to get the two charters and have Trackhouse racing as we see it. But it seems like every week Ross Chastain is in the news, usually not for the most positive of reasons. It's been over a year since his last Cup Series victory. I'm trying to remember if he's won anything in between now and then. I don't think he has. There's been a lot of conjecture, a lot of talk about him. You had that idiot stick Gregson try to fight him and took a right cross from Chastain at Kansas. Kyle Larson didn't want to have anything to do with it because he's 4'9", and but his owner and his car owners and Hendrick and Gordon were whining. In the grand scheme of things, though, Kyle Larson drives similar to Ross Chastain. It's just people seemingly deal with it because Kyle Larson is now a top 75 NASCAR driver, which I think is a bit presumptuous. And then also, he's had two really good seasons in his career. And the guy's been voted one of the 25 best drivers since 1998. I think that's pretty stupid. But these two guys are guys that are kind of bullheaded. They ran into each other. Two of the three best cars on the racetrack gave away the victory, really, in the process. But, I mean, I think it's a case of these guys are going to keep on having these battles, and Ross Chastain is not going to give because it's just not in his DNA. You could hook him into the wall. You could right rear him into the wall. You could Matt Kenseth him into the wall. It really won't matter. I don't think it would phase him. But I don't know. What do you think, Josh, in regards to that?
Well, I mean, I think maybe a right rear into the wall someone else right rearing him into the wall might cause him to reconsider, especially if it ended up getting hurt or something, or if he put somebody in the wall and they ended up getting hurt. That might be the line there. One would have to think, but I mean, it's just a lot of groupthink and bias. With everybody with who's been established and who's been part of the sport for a long time. Obviously, Trackhouse is a new team. Hendrick has been in the sport for since 1984, and obviously Ross came from starting Parks and worked, grinded his way up, and really did unconventional way of getting here into the Cup Series, and of course, ruffled feathers in his first real attempt at having a funded ride, with Harvick and everything, and of course Larson has been kind of one of the favorites. I'm not gonna say favorite son, but he's definitely been a favorite driver in terms of people being impressed by his talent on the racetrack and what he's been able to do. So since he's been in the Cup Series, so I think when you look at it like that, obviously a lot of people are going to take sides on the guy who's been here longer and has credibility to their names. Of course, he's ruffled feathers with other people who've had a lot of hardware. Elliott, Denny Hamlin, other Kyle Busch, other people. So clearly there's a when you look at it like that, it's kind of stacked against him. But I mean, in this incident alone, I think you have to consider self-preservation I think, I mean, if you look at the data, he was full throttle into turn 1 and 2 and got tight and held on to it. And he said he meant to squeeze Larson into the wall, after Larson squeezed him into the wall on the previous restart. But, of course, you consider the future, of course. Maybe do you try to figure out a way to survive that without making contact and continuing on and everything, or you just hope you land square into him and keep going. I think that's something you have to consider. Of course, almost cleared him, Larson there, but for Ross, but didn't, and hooked himself into the wall. So, I think that's the consideration you have to make about racing hard is, is it worth it to try to squeeze him into the wall and potentially take yourself out, or do you try to survive the next corner and potentially, or the current corner, and then try to keep him alongside for the next corner after the backstretch? So it's hard to say, I guess, but of course, if you leave it half throttle or something, and make the corner, and possibly let him go, possibly let away race win, but you keep the points. You also have to consider the points as well, and having a top 5 versus being behind the wall, and coming out of the care center. That's something else you have to consider with that result. But I mean, it's tough to say, and of course, people are going to be biased against him and everything. And yeah, you're right. I mean, we talked about it before the show. I mean, Larson has done a lot of this in the past as well, the same type of racing style. But he's obviously been able to do a lot in the car when he needs to, and obviously a lot of people, I mean, I'll admit it too, have liked his driving style over the years and everything. And Ross Chastain, of course, if he doesn't be aggressive, I mean, does he even really get the top 5s and top 10s that he's been getting since he's been in the Cup Series? Or does he get relegated to a lot more mediocre top 15, top 20 finishes? If he stays, um, I guess, you know, contained, or however you want to call it. Like, does he have worse finishes if he's more mindful of others? So that's definitely something to consider. And of course, in this next gen car, you really have only one or two opportunities to really make a move for the win off of a restart. So especially a track where it's really tough to pass anyways. So that's also something to consider in that regard. So there's a lot of considerations you have to make. And I mean, today Justin Marks had mentioned that I think for him, he wants to see less, or that he needs to have some things that he needs to clean up for Chastain. But I mean, I think it's probably a private conversation of exactly what to contain there. And of course, probably make some considerations on when to go for it versus when not to go for it. But at the end of the day, I mean, Ross Chastain races really hard, and like I said before, I think he's similar to Brad Keselowski from 2009 to 2014 when he got beat up by Jeff Gordon on pit road at Texas. So something to consider there. I think is a lot similar to that driving style. So I think you just got to continue to race hard, and just got to be able to convert that racing hard and wrecking people in the wins, and then eventually people will just have to accept it for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think wins will help Ross's case. I mean, that's kind of what helped with Brad once he had his 2011 season after his stuff he did in Xfinity against Gibbs guys, most notably Hamlin and Kyle Busch. But, he did ruffle feathers. It's the same with Logano. I think there's always the flavor of the month, and these days I think it really is about Ross Chastain and putting himself in position. I think it's something to look at for later in the year if things kind of start going haywire on him. If some of the stuff that happens here is part of the reason why. Chastain currently is the overall points leader by 27 over Christopher Bell. Kevin Harvick is 2 points behind Bell. In third, Hamlin fourth, William Byron fifth, Truex sixth, Blaney, Reddick, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Larson round out the top 10. Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Chris Buescher, Ricky Stenhouse, Darrell Wallace Jr., and Chase Briscoe round out the 16. Nobody that's outside of the 16 has a win, so that is the 16 at the moment. 13 points separates Briscoe and Daniel Suarez. Bowman is in between them, but of course he hasn't run in 3 weeks, and it doesn't seem like he's going to return. He's definitely not returning this coming week. We don't know when he will. And as an aside to that, I was going to go and have a rant about Briscoe and how god-awful the Stewart-Haas racing team is because of how bad their cars have been all year. Outside of Kevin Harvick, I mean, you have Briscoe in 16th. I mean, he has He has 4 top 10s, 3 top 5s, an average of 18th place finish, which is really pathetic. Compare it to his teammates. Trying to look for Almirola. Almirola is a near 23rd place finish average. Priest has a 24th place average finish. Priest hasn't gotten a top 10 yet all year. Almirola only has 1. And Briscoe did lead laps at some point this year. I'm trying to remember. I feel like Martinsville, but I can't quantify when that was, but yeah, it was Martinsville. He led 109 laps. Otherwise, he's only led 6 laps the rest of the year. Yeah, I mean, he finished after the first 3 races where he didn't run very well in any of them. He had issues at Daytona, of course, a wreck. He finished 7th at Phoenix. Then it was just a bunch of nothing. Austin, he finished 15th. Richmond, 12th. Then he had the 3 straight top 5 finishes. Bristol Dirt, which was expected. Martinsville, which was a lot to do with track position. And then Talladega after, he spun out and lost laps and a whole bit. Was able to get back on the lead lap. And then the last 3 weeks have been pretty god-awful. More similar to what he was doing early in the season. I mean, I don't know what is going on with that team. I don't know what's going on with that organization outside of Chase Briscoe car, the 10 and the 41, but they suck really bad. And the fact that they don't change anything is disturbing to me because he's supposedly the future of your organization. The rumors are Josh Berry might be coming in. He's an older driver in terms of age, of course, not really good on road courses. And is it going to be with Rodney Childers? Is it going to be that same team, or what's going to happen there? Is Eric Almirola going to continue to drive around 15th to 25th every week like he's done his whole career? Are they going to keep Ryan Preece around? I don't know what the end game is there. Tony is preoccupied racing with his wife and running drag racing. Gene Haas, who knows what the hell he wants to do, because one day he might be at an F1 race, one day he might be at a Cup race, one day you can't even find him. So what is his commitment? You can't win in this sport when you don't have people that are committed, and that goes from ownership all the way down. If your leaders don't give a crap, then what's to say that any of these other people do? Harvick does, because he has his legacy and he wants to go out on a good note. But to be fair, ever since he showed up there back 9 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever, he's been the dominant presence there, and basically all the vortex has been on that 4 car. Everybody else has stunk outside of 2018. So something to look at and consider as we move forward in the points and in this season. Larson, as I mentioned, won the Shriners Children's 200 at Darlington. 18 lead changes amongst 9 drivers. Larson, John Hunter Nemechek, Josh Berry were the 3 major lap leaders in the race. The top 5 drivers were really, those drivers were up there all day, along with Mayer and Berry. Larson won stage 1, finished second in stage 2. John Hunter finished second in stage 1, first in stage 2, qualified on pole. And Larson the winner over Allgaier, Custer, Austin Hill, and John Hunter. Hocevar in 6th, Josh Berry 7th, Sam Mayer 8th, Kaz Gralla 9th, and Corey Heim, his teammate, in 10th. There were 26 cars on the lead lap. I mean, there was only a couple cars that fell out early in the race. So Riley Herbst wrecked early, and then Blaine Perkins had a mechanical. Then there was a multi-car wreck, which took out Ryan Ellis, Bruckshot Jones, Ryan Truex, and Chandler Smith. And Joe Graff Jr. tried to go and run over, I think he tried to run over one of his teammates, and that didn't work out so well. That's what happened with that. But Larson gets the win. Second win for the Colleague 10 car, the quote star car this year. Last late race battles, getting into it with John Hunter Nemechek. But kind of what we expected. Larson going out there, being able to do work. It didn't start that comfortably for him, but he ends up getting that victory. John Hunter Nemechek gets a playoff point in the process, but probably maybe leaving wondering if he could have done a little something different to try and hold off Young Money there. But he still is well up in the points, and good highlight reel battle there for later in the season.
I mean, that race finished there to the Xfinity race, very much kind of similar to what we saw in 2003 with Jamie McMurray and Todd Bodine battling for the win in the 2003 Xfinity race there. But it was a very, very exciting finish with Larson fighting Kyle Larson, or with John Hunter Nemechek, for the win. And of course, it's just hard racing there. John Hunter, it said it after coming out of the care center, didn't have really any issues with Larson, but really, really exciting win there. Larson driving it deep into turn 3 and grabbing the lead on the on the final lap, and then John Hunter fighting back on the inside, and they make contact after Larson runs into the wall and then bounces off of that and gets into John Hunter, and John Hunter spins towards the front stretch wall and everything. So it was definitely an exciting finish there. John Hunter still gets a top 5 out of it, so was not hurt too much in terms of points. The only thing he loses out on is a win there. But I mean, definitely a good race based on the statistics of the race for lead changes and the passing and all that stuff. Obviously, this type of racing for the Xfinity cars, they definitely put on a good show, with the amount of tire wear that they get and the amount of power that they have compared to the Cup cars. So this, of course, is a really good track for Xfinity racing, of course. And, for a lot of the regulars, of course, they still get good finishes here. Of course, Carson Hocevar, driving the 77, went from 25th to 6th. So definitely a really good really good start for him in the 77 this weekend, of course, making a one-off here in Xfinity this year. But Josh Berry, of course, you talked about earlier, finishing in 7th. So, good start there. Kaz Grala, Corey Heim, both guys driving for Sam Hunt, running out the top 10. So they had some pretty good finishes there. Parker Kligerman, 13th. Jeremy Clementson, 14th. So really shows you how much this series, some of the smaller funded teams, how they can go and get good finishes, and how they're able to compare against the competition. When there's definitely a lot of tire wear and things that can cause changes in the running order there. So good results there, of course. Anthony Alfredo, of course, running the Dale Jr. Throwback to 2017. So good scheme there, in my opinion. Finishing on the lead lap in 15th there, so good run for him there. But yeah, I mean this race is definitely, I think, probably better than the Cup race, of course. But I think we all know that at this point that the Xfinity car seems to perform overall better than the Cup car on overall all the tracks. So just that's how it is these days. But that's how it is. But still, yeah, it was definitely a exciting finish there at the end, and definitely feels more like a throwback finish than what we saw in the Cup Series.
Yeah, and for Kyle Larson finally getting that elusive victory at Darlington. He's been waiting a while to get one. I think he really thought he was going to get a double there. I thought so, but didn't happen. He did get the one on Saturday though. And for John Hunter, doesn't really hurt him too bad. He still leads the overall point standings by 1 point over Austin Hill, who leads the playoff standings, of course, with one more win. John Hunter has 6 top 5, so Austin Hill's 5, and 9 top 10, so Austin Hill's 8. Average finish is basically a position better for John Hunter at the moment. The battle is really between those two guys, to be honest. Something to look at as we go along, I think, in the rest of the season. I think there's going to be a lot more to see a third of the way through the 2023 Xfinity Series season, and those two guys are the dominant figures. Of course, Chandler Smith, Sammy Smith, Jeb Burton all have won, so they're all behind him. But the next 3 drivers that are there overall in points, Justin Allgaier, Josh Berry, Cole Custer, all veterans trying to make something happen here this year. Sheldon Creed, essentially pretty solid at the moment. 23 points above the cut line. Riley Herbst has had a pretty bad run of it recently, and he's now only 6 points ahead of the cutoff. Mayer is 2 points ahead of the cutoff of Daniel Hemrick. And then the drivers that are outside, Parker Kligerman has had a recent bad run of races and went from being inside the cut to minus 33. Bruckshot Jones, minus 43. And then after that, it's really asking a lot. We'll go and do the trucks thing, and then I'll rewind back to the 75 greatest drivers piece. Truck series, they had the Buckle Up South Carolina 200 at Darlington Raceway. Christian Eckes in the Herschel McGriff Throwback gets the victory, leads the most laps, wins stage 1, third in stage 2. Over Stuart Friesen, Tanner Gray, William Byron in the 51 for Kyle Busch Motorsports, winner of the second stage. Carson Hocevar, so a 5th and a 6th place finish for him this past weekend. Rajah Caruth, who had a really fast Wendell Scott Throwback number 24, late in the race, but the cautions didn't land in his favor. Bubba Wallace, Corey Heim, who was the dominant truck for a good amount of the night, Dean Thompson, and then Caden Honeycutt, who's making, I believe, his first start for the Young's Motorsports team. 23 trucks on the lead lap. Looking at some of the, the G2G trucks, of course, had issues. Chase Purdy getting involved in a wreck early in the race. He was not really happy. Going through some of these other people. Enfinger coming off his win at Kansas only comes home with a 14th place finish. Corey LaJoie, who was our wild card pick, finished 16th. He really never had pace the whole night. I mean, the Eckes gets the victory. There was some nonsense there late in the race, but there was a lot of wrecking and stuff. But in the grand scheme, they almost said that I think they were trying to go and keep it going with the green white checkers, and they said that he hadn't crossed the line, which I'm like, there's no effing way that he didn't cross the line there. And then they rewound it and played it on TV and said that, yeah, he did cross the line. I'm like, thank God, because they're just going to keep on destroying vehicles at that point. But I think the bigger story that a lot of people are not bothering to really cover. I mean, granted, credit to Christian Eckes now with this McAnally Hilgeman team, the work that they have done this year to be contenders. Definite credit to them in what they're doing this season relative to where they've been over their existence in the Truck Series. But I think the thing we really have to look at is Corey Heim dominated this race, really. He was up front for a good amount of the day. It was really him and Eckes the whole day, or whole night. And then for some reason, Corey Heim's crew chief and team decided to leave him out on old tires when everybody else on the lead lap got tires. And then once he got tires, he's buried in the back, and trying to get through the traffic is very hard. And that's the one thing that nobody bothered to ask. Like, why wouldn't you interview Corey Heim after he led 66 laps, started on pole, and was basically up front the whole day, and then you take it out of your driver's hands? How do you do that in that spot, especially knowing that a win has so much more value in the truck series, knowing how short the regular season is, needing those playoff points, getting all the benefits that come from that. I honestly think that was a bigger story that nobody bothered to cover, because they screwed the pooch on that one. The good thing for him, though, is even with that misstep, he's only 15 points out of the overall lead. He's one of, 5 drivers who have won this year. So, I mean, he's solidly in the points. So he's solidly in the playoffs either way, but I think he could have really made a statement if he had went out there and got that second win of 2023 in 9 races there. But what did you think about the Truck Series race, Josh, on Friday night?
I mean, yeah, I think, I kind of agree with you there with Corey Heim, of course, led a ton of laps and led the second most laps, but you don't interview him after the race to see how what his reaction to that was. And I mean, it's a result of the, TV constraints that are now in the sport. And, they only have time to interview the winner in maybe second or third place, and that's about it. And then they don't really talk to anybody else. And then they cut to the post-race show, or they cut to another sport, which is probably what they ended up doing there. So, yeah, I mean, that was obviously, it's a sign of the times in this sport. But then, you also talk about the amount of overtimes that they had. Eckes, of course, great restart, and then a spin behind them. They have to take another restart course. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time, I guess, with the truck series, of course, scheduled for 147 laps, but they went into double overtime and ended up doing 158 laps. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot you can say about the racing quality in the truck series, but yeah, at the same time, guy like Christian Eckes, who hasn't really won too much in this series, gets a win. You have Carson Hocevar getting another top 5, Raja getting a best career finish here. Guys like Dean Thompson, Caden Honeycutt getting top 10s. Nick Sanchez, who had a highlight early in the race and gave Mario Andretti a scare with his paint scheme dedicated to Mario Andretti. Ended up, I think that's another story too. Of course, he got into it at the end, but started third and finished 11th. So I think obviously his first year in the Truck Series and got a lot to improve. Ross Chastain finishing 13th and in a Nice car where kind of expect him to try to run up front, as a Xfinity or as a truck driver or as even as a Cup driver, expect him to be up front, but he wasn't. So tells you how tough it is sometimes at Darlington. But definitely, yeah, I mean, a lot of wrecks happening in this race, of course. But Eckes ends up pulling it out in the end, convincingly at least, and he was able to keep the win and everything. So yeah, I mean this, it's another typical truck race that we see we've come to expect, where people just tear up stuff throughout the field, and you have a lot of young, inexperienced drivers with only a handful of veterans these days.
Yeah, I mean that's great points as always. I mean the truck series has been watered down heavily uh, the way it is this year, but one thing is for sure, there is a competitive battle uh, right now. I think there's 6 guys that could really say that they're in the mix for this championship. The top 6 drivers in the points. I would also venture to say that I mean Tanner Gray is making a step forward in his career. I guess that first win is coming for him. Nick Sanchez, as a rookie, of course, trying to get that win for Kyle Busch Motorsports and Rev Racing. He's getting better every week. And I mean, those are 2 drivers I think we'd have to look at as well. Going into North Wilkesboro in a loaded truck field for North Wilkesboro this coming week. But in terms of the points, Zane Smith leads by 9 over Ty Majeski. Corey Heim, as I mentioned, is 15 points behind in third, so 6 points behind Majeski. Ben Rhodes, Christian Eckes round out the top 5. Grant Infinger, Matt Crafton, Tanner Gray, Nick Sanchez round out the top 10. Of course, Carson Hocevar is outside of the top 10, but has a win, so he is in, which bumps out Stuart Friesen. He is 6 points behind Nick Sanchez. Matt DiBurrito's 20 points behind Nick Sanchez, running 11th. And Jake Garcia, who hasn't run he's missed one race, right? Missed Daytona. Competitive in 13th right now, 36 points out of the cutoff and ahead of a bunch of people who've run every race this year. So something to look at there as we go to North Wilkesboro. I brought up the 75 greatest drivers, so it's just adding the 25 to the people that were already there. To list the drivers that were, I guess we can start with the 50 that were we started with coming from 1998 during the 50th anniversary year. Reading this off of racer.com, an article by Kelly Crandall. Of course, in alphabetical order, Bobby Allison, Davey Allison, Buck and Buddy Baker, Jeff Bodine, Neil Bonnet, Red Byron, Jerry Cook, Dale Earnhardt, Ralph Earnhardt, Bill Elliott, Richie Evans, Red Farmer, Tim Flock, AJ Foyt, Harry Gant, Jeff Gordon, Ray Hendrick, Jack Ingram, Ernie Irvin, Bobby Isaac, Dale Jarrett, Ned Jarrett, Junior Johnson, Alan Kowicki, Terry Labonte, Fred Lorenzen, Tiny Lund, Mark Martin, Herschel McGriff. Yeah, it's a Herschel. If I thought it was, yeah, no, so. Okay, yeah, no. All right, so Herschel McGriff. Of course, Throwback Scheme 1 this past weekend, as mentioned. Cotton Owens, Marvin Panch, Benny Parsons, David Pearson, Lee Petty, Richard Petty, Mr. the King, Tim Richmond, Fireball Roberts, Ricky Rudd, Marshall Teague, and Herb Thomas, Curtis Turner, Rusty Wallace, Darrell Waltrip, Joe Weatherly, Bob Welburn, Rex White, Glenn Wood, Cale Yarbrough, Leroy Yarbrough, and that's not, they misspelled his, Yarborough, yeah. No, they misspelled Leroy Yarbrough's name. And,
He's a different spelling, though, right?
Yeah, he is a different spelling. So those were the 50. The 25 that were added over these past few weeks. One Anthony Wayne Stewart, also known as Smoke. Tony Stewart, Candy Kane, Mike Stefanik, Randy LaJoy, Kyle Larson, Greg Biffle, Sterling Marlin, Ryan Newman, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Carl Edwards, Ron Hornaday Jr., Jeff Burton, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Bobby Labonte, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, Larry Phillips, Sam Ard, Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Matt Kenseth, and Jim Johnson, also known as the third 7-time Cup Series champion. Now, I don't know what your thoughts are, Josh, but I'm going to go and throw in here. I figured there was at least one definite omission in Jack Sprague as a 3-time Truck Series champion, basically one of the 2 pioneers in the Truck Series with Ron Hornaday Jr. He's definitely gotten his due, one in the NASCAR Hall of Fame and also in this case. But Jack Sprague, for whatever reason, keeps on getting overlooked. I don't know why. I mean, in terms of Xfinity Series, a lot of the drivers now, they don't stay that long. So there really isn't anything like what Randy LaJoy did back in the day. Considering modified drivers, of course, considering the late Mike Stefanik, he is a NASCAR Hall of Famer. So I think as much as anything, I believe that this 25 was more of a mirroring of a lot of the guys that are in the NASCAR Hall of Fame and just kind of adding them in for whatever, if they omitted them initially. A lot of these active or semi-active drivers are pretty straightforward. I mean, I do have a gripe with a few of these. I don't think that, I mean, I guess because there's been drivers that had way less wins added that were in the initial list. That's maybe why Candy Cane was in there. I don't think that he really was that big of a deal. I'm trying to think of how many years he really was that relevant. I mean, 2006, he backed into the playoffs or something. He needed a fan vote to win the All Star Race, or that was like 2008 or something. Like, I can't remember a year where I'm like, oh, Casey Kane was the guy ever. And that to me means like, what the hell are you doing? Like Ernie in 1994 was the guy and was in position to possibly beat Dale Earnhardt for a championship before a serious accident. Ernie Irvin came back from serious injuries and then basically one eye beat a lot of these guys and won races. So I kind of get that. You get Alan Quickie, Davey Allison, because they died well before we really knew how much they could have done, especially Davey. Greg Biffle it's like hit or miss for me. I know he won in the Trucks and Xfinity Series championships and 19 Cup races, finished second in points in 2005 to Tony, but not really sure that that's a great pick. I don't think that it's really the greatest. Sterling Marlin, God bless his soul. I know he has Parkinson's or whatever. He's got serious health issues going on. He won 2 Daytona 500s. He won at Darlington, won at Charlotte. So he won some of the big races. Only won 10 races in his career. But it's kind of, I'm not sure that that's worthy. I mean, I'm talking about somebody who was like an actual pioneer of a series, and like Jack Sprague. You could think maybe like Frank Kimmel, since ARCA is now under the NASCAR banner. Like, why wouldn't you consider Frank Kimmel or Iggy Katona, for example, to be listed in there based on the amount of races they won and championships? I mean, there might be some others or modified guys that I would think would feel kind of a certain way. I think Doug Coby might be one of them, amongst others. I think Larson getting in now, as I said earlier, is a bit presumptuous because essentially he's had 2 really good years in his career. The comeback year in 21 where they gave him everything and he won 10 races and won a championship. And then 2017. But other than that, I mean, really, what are we talking about here with Kyle Larson? We're talking about his potential and his talent, sure. But under that logic, we need to just anoint him in the Sprint Car and Midget Hall of Fame too, with him winning 1 Knoxville Nationals and a couple of Chili Bowls. Under that kind of logic. I don't see that as a logical one. No neck. I mean, really? I mean, after 2003, can anybody really tell me what the hell Ryan Newman did? I mean, Ryan Newman had that great year in 2003. And I think he broke the Bristol track record, went under 15 seconds, and won all those poles and all this crap. But other than that, like, really, I mean, Tony Stewart choked away the Daytona 500 and gave it to him. He won the 2013 Brickyard 400. I think Snoopy was on the car or some shit. But, I mean, he backdoored his way into the playoffs with Roush a couple, 2, 3, 4 years ago. But literally, I'm picking 3 moments in a span of, what is it? From 2003 to like 2020. He basically, for like 16, 17 years, was basically irrelevant. The guy is driving for Rick Ware. And like, come on now. Like, really. I mean, he almost died. That's really as much as anything. Like, he almost died in a race car.
Contribution.
and I mean, he's yelled at all these assholes in the Daytona Beach Mafia about the safety and everything. But I mean, I don't get it with him. People want to be mad about Randy LaJoie, but he won back-to-back Xfinity titles. He was a factor in that series. He ran Cup for multiple teams over the years. And I also, and if we want to go further, his contributions in safety, since we're talking about no neck, with the LaJoie seats, the joy of seating, I think has played a big part in a lot of the health for a lot of these drivers. Carl Edwards, I mean, he won 28 times in the Cup Series. He's won in all 3 series. I guess that's like a 50-50. Finished second in the championship twice in the Cup Series. Had 3 chances for sure to win the championship in 08, 2011, and then 2016 when he walked out of the sport. Jeff Burton was another one that when I heard that, I'm like, huh? Granted, Jeff Burton won a lot of the big races. He won the 600 a couple times. He won Daytona for his first race of it. He didn't win his Daytona for his first Cup win. That was Greg Biffle, the summer race. But he won Darlington the one time where he hit the wall when it was raining, and somehow or another they ended up calling the race, and he's doing a rain dance, and he won. Won 20 plus races, and he did win an Xfinity series, but like Jeff Burton wasn't really like a game changer guy. He was always like second fiddle to Mark Martin at Roush. I think there was about 2 years where he was really that guy, if we're going to get into it. Like 2000, the year 2000 maybe was one of them, when he ended up falling short to Bobby Labonte. And then 2006 when he drove for RCR, and that was the first of the 5 consecutive championships for Jimmy Johnson. But I'm like, I'm not really sure. Like, I don't really get the notion of some of these guys getting picked over, but I guess they needed to fill 25 spots. People wanted to be mad about Larry Phillips. The fact is, the Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series, what was the Winston Racing Series, has a place in this sport. People, the local drivers going and winning. And he did a great job, and he won many championships. I mean, if we're going to have that argument, I mean, where do you think Josh Berry came from? Where's Carson Quapple driving? They're driving in the Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series. The Cars Tour is essentially that. They're running at Hickory and running at whatever. That's where he's making his name. I mean, Carson Quapple is going to be in an Xfinity car probably by the end of the year. He's probably going to be in truck sooner than that. But that's where it came from. Sam Ard, he got seriously injured in an accident in an Xfinity car to end his career early, but he owned cars after that. The Thomas's Country Ham car, where the likes of Brett Bodine made his NASCAR Big 3 debut, Jimmy Hensley, et cetera, et cetera. Sam Ard was a pioneer of what is now the Xfinity series with Jack Ingram and some of the other guys of that day. I mean, the rest of them other ones I think are pretty straightforward. The Busch brothers, Harvick, you can't argue his resume, plus the fact that he owned a championship winning race team with Ron Hornaday winning 2 of his 4 Truck Series championships for Kevin Harvick, and a good number of those 51 races in the Truck Series with Kevin Harvick as well. And what is the other one? Yeah, I mean, Logano last year basically solidified it. It's not like he didn't have an argument without that championship, but winning that second championship basically solidified it. And he's in his 30s, early 30s there. So, I mean, he's going to be around for a while. Kenseth and Jimmy, pretty easy to justify in both of those cases. Not just the longevity aspect of it, but the ability to win so many races, win the biggest races, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know, Josh. Before we move forward into the roundup, did you have any takeaways from that additional 25? I know, of course, you're very happy that Junebug made it. Well deserved, honestly. I think no matter what people may want to say about his career, he did have 4 really great years in his career, 2 in the 8 car and 03 and 04, where he was a definite factor for the championship, and then 2 years in the 88 car. I think it was 14 and 15, where he is a factor for the championship. There was a definite lull around that, but he won races. He did something his dad couldn't do. He won 2 Daytona 500s, and his presence now as basically a spokesperson for the fans, as a media member, and being the guy who can influence so many things just with his microphone, and being a car owner, has, I think, as big or a bigger presence. Um, it's almost like what he probably would have done if he had ended up having DEI, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously very happy to hear and see Dale Jr. make it into the list, and be recognized as one of the 75 greatest drivers in the sport. So yeah, very happy about that. But I think you have a lot of takeaways and complaints, I guess, about this list. And I mean, I'll say that I was right that they would put all the Cup champions who have won a title since 1998 on this list, and they did that, and or who weren't already on that list in 1998. So of course, uh, on that list for all the Cup champions, but it also meant that Cup champion is not the only requisite to be on this list. Of course, you have Xfinity champions in here, you have truck champions in here on this list. But beyond just winning a championship, you have people who won the crown jewels of this race or of this series, and in NASCAR in general, or had really outstanding achievements. And I mean, obviously, you talked about Ryan Newman and what he really did in NASCAR, and I mean, right, he never won a championship. Wasn't the guy outside of 1 year, but I mean, I think 51 poles is a pretty remarkable achievement. I mean, obviously, it tailored off in later years as things changed, but I mean, obviously, he did a lot in the first part of his career, winning so many poles. So I mean, obviously, they're gonna recognize that there. Of course, you have Carl Edwards in this list. Won a couple of the crown jewels in this series, of course, and was a former Xfinity winner as well. Sterling Marlin, 2-time winner in Daytona 500. Yeah, I mean, obviously, didn't really have much of a contribution. I mean, he could have won the 2002 title if he didn't break his neck. Everything, obviously, considering all of that, I guess they put him on the list there. Casey Kane, obviously, that was one that really stood out to me as, really, but he also won the Coca-Cola 600 a handful of times, and obviously that's one of NASCAR's crown jewels as well. There, so yeah, I mean, I think the list is pretty well rounded, but also, I mean, it's very heavy with handed in the star power. I mean, obviously, most of these guys were the stars of the Cup Series in the mid 2000s or the late 90s. So I mean, obviously, it's gonna lean heavy, towards that direction. Of course, I mean, obviously, it brings a lot of attention to back to the series for people who may have stopped watching or reduced their time, and everything being recognized brings all that fans back into it, of course. So that's kind of what it is. I mean, I will say one name, if we want to consider titles. I mean, you said Jack Sprague, of course, being a pioneer. I mean, I mean, I feel like, if we're going to just talk about titles strictly alone, that possibly you could make a case for somebody like Todd Bodine because he won the truck title 2 times and, had 15 wins in the Xfinity Series and 22 truck wins. So you could make a case for him being on that list as well, in addition to his brother, uh, Brett, or not Brett, but Jeff Bodine. So there's a case there. Just looking through some of the guys that won titles. I mean, if we want to go in strictly titles alone, do we want to give Ricky Stenhouse, who now has the Daytona 500, in addition to two Xfinity titles, do we want to give him the nod there? Is he really the guy? I mean, I don't think so, but I mean, you can make that consideration because he won a title twice, 2 times in a row. We say the same thing about Tyler Reddick. That's probably too early, but again, 2 titles in a row. But of course, those titles come at a time when Xfinity is very, very lean in terms of competition. There. What about Jeff Green? I mean, he was the guy in the Xfinity Series for a number of years. Do we give him the nod there as well? I mean, that could make the list less bloated with Cup drivers. Of course, you talked about Kyle Larson a lot. I mean, I think if it weren't for 2021, probably would not be on this list. So that's something to consider as well. And what about Johnny Benson, who he was truck title winner in 2008 and won the Xfinity Series in 1995. Of course, didn't really have that stellar of a Cup career, but he was there for a number of years. So think about all those considerations that they could have made. But I mean, they went really Cup heavy, like I expected that they would, and then I think they gave the nod to a lot of very obvious choices of guys that made their names outside of the Cup Series, like Ron Hornaday, like Larry Phillips, Sam Ard, of course, one of the pioneers of the Xfinity Series. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely a pretty heavy list here, and I think everybody here probably you can make a case for them being on this list. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big list, and looking forward to seeing what they have when they have the 100 drivers here in 25 years. And I don't know if we'll be around. Well, I mean, we'll be around. I don't know if this show will be around. Maybe it will be. So it's 25 years away. So we'll see who ends up being on there for list 100. Maybe some of the kids that aren't here or that are not on this list currently. Maybe we have drivers' kids. Do we see Brexton Bush, or do we see some of the drivers' kids make it up into the Cup Series that have already started to become well talented and everything in the lower divisions? Do they make it up into this 100 or something like that? That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, I'll be in my 60s at that point. You'll be in your, I think, your early 50s or something like that. So we'll see if at that point of it, if we're watching it on actual TV or it'll be on streaming or whatever. Keelan Harvick versus Owen Larson. That'll be compelling. But I guess we'll find out at that point when that point comes. Let's get into the roundup here. IMSA raced at Laguna Seca. The Ganassi Cadillac team, Sebastian Bourdais, Renger van der Zande, gets the victory. They've had a lot of issues so far this year, both here and abroad, but they get the victory by 3.882 seconds over the Porsche of Nick Tandy and Matthew Jaminet. Pippo Durrani and Alexander Sims round out the podium, so 2 Cadillacs on the podium. Ricky Taylor, Philippe Albuquerque in the Konica Minolta Acura, and then the first of the 2 BMWs, Philipping and Augusto Farfus, finished 5th. The Blomqvist and Colin Braun were on pole or on the front row with the 7 Porsche of Matt Campbell and Felipe Nasr, but they had multitude of issues during the race. What does that mean? The Sheena Monk, Catherine Legg, Gradient Racing Acura had problems all day. There were 5 retirements. The most notable ones were Jared Andretti getting bounced off of that Matt Campbell Porsche and going crashing into the pits in his first race in a GTD car. Then John Ferrano, who had to go and get medical attention at a local hospital after his incident. But they're saying all is well for him. That's Tower Motorsports team principal there. In LMP2, Seth Thomas and Mikkel Jensen for TDS Racing gets the win over Ben Keating and Chastain in the PR1 Matheson 52, and George Kurtz, Ben Hanley in the crowd strike by racing by APR car. Round out the podium. In GTD, Metney and Kayvan Burlow for Kelly Moss with Riley Porsche. They get a double podium, first and third. And Oberlin and Hull, Udell and Ann Lauer round out the podium for the GTD field. I guess it's for bronze. And then the first GTD Pro was Daniel Ucadella and Jules Gounon in the WeatherTech Racing Mercedes AMG. Second win of the season for them. Won the Rolex. Beats Jack Hawksworth, Ben Barnicoat, and then Klaus Bachler and Patrick Pile in the Pfaff Motorsports Porsche. Their next race will be Detroit, prior to a good amount of these teams going to Le Mans for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The MotoGP race at Le Mans was carnage filled, but Marco Bezzecchi takes his second win of 2023, gets the championship to within 1 point, even with Pecco Bagnaia crashing with Maverick Vinales. So even with all of that, he still was able to get through. Bezzecchi wins Ducati sweep of the podium. Jorge Martin and Johan Zarco, the Pramac teammates, finish second and third. Zarco, the French rider, gets a podium at home. Augusto Fernandez, fourth. Alicia Spargaro in fifth. Fabio Quartararo finished seventh at home, but struggles still continue for him. There were only 13 riders classified at the end of the race. Marc Marquez tucked his front wheel late in the race while battling for a podium. Jack Miller was leading early, but then ended up crashing. The former Suzuki teammates Rins and Mir crashed a couple laps apart from each other. Alex Marquez and Luca Marini got into an issue, or I think they were involved in the same incident. And then there was Vinales and Pecco Bagnaia, as I mentioned earlier. The standings, the having the sprint races every weekend has helped Pecco Bagnaia because he gets points for that, and so he's a point ahead of Bezzecchi. Brad Binder's third, 13 points behind Bagnaia. Martin, 14 points back overall in fourth. Johan Zarco's in fifth. Just go right there. Trying to change his stats for the riders. Yeah, so victories. 2 victories for him and Pecco Bagnaia. They're showing Marco. How are they showing Marco Bezzecchi twice? I guess it repeats there. I don't know. Interesting. So 2, 2, 1. So there's been 5 Grand Prix so far this year and 3 winners so far in the World Championship. The other one was Alex Rins, who right now is 10th in points. In Moto 2, going into the race there at Le Mans, Tony Arbolino gets another victory over Philippe Salic and Alonso Lopez. Close battle between, there was a 6-rider battle there. Celestino Vietti, Jake Dixon, Som Kvyat Chantra. The Americans, Joe Roberts actually gets 12th place this race. Sean Dillon Kelly was within a second of getting a point, fell short of that to Sam Lowes. Unclassified, 3 riders did not start: Aaron Canet, Manuel Gonzalez, Albert Arenas. We're talking about, because Pedro Costa crashed, talking about him taking over that gas ride that Fernandez is on. The points right going into the next round. Arbolino leads by 25 over Acosta and 38 over Alonso Lopez. Salic is a point behind Lopez there. We're trying to go through here. Joe Roberts, 18th in points with 10 points. Sean Dillon Kelly, one of a bunch that have not scored a point so far this year, trying at least getting closer to that. Moving towards Rally Portugal was Cali Rovanpera, as I mentioned earlier, getting his first win of the season by 54.4 seconds. I believe that's. So I'm trying to scroll over. Can't see it. Yeah, 54.7 seconds over Danny Sordo. 1 minute 20 over Esapeka Lapi. So, and Tanak was 2 minutes 4 seconds behind in 4th. Making it 2 Hyundais on the podium. Ford of Tanak was in position, possibly get a podium, and had issues late. 3 Hyundais in the top 5. The other Toyotas had issues. Gus Greensmith gets the victory after a essentially bogus penalty was called on Oliver Solberg in the Rally 2 race. Andreas Mikkelsen rounds out the podium there. Next race will be Rally Italy, which I think is Sardinia. That'll be the first week of 1st of June for that one. Extreme in Scotland, as I mentioned, Veloce Racing got the victory there in race 2, and in race 1, it was the X44 team of Lewis Hamilton with Fraser, the defending series champions, to go and get that. The next race will be the Island X-Breeze in just under 2 months' time, but the championship, the Veloce team of Molly Taylor and Kevin Hansen are leading the points by 11 over Layla Sands, Matthias Ekstrom, and then the Rosberg team of Michaela Allen Kotulinski and Joanne Christofferson. They're a point ahead of the last year's champions, Christina Gutierrez, Fraser McConnell, of course, taking over for Sebastian Loeb at X44. The Ganassi Hummer team of Amanda Sorensen and RJ Anderson are in 5th. Very close battle between those 3 teams, separated by 2 points, leading into some of the further rounds as we go along. In Extreme E, Indy next at Indy Road Course. Bring that up. See what went on over there. Matteo Nannini went and got the victory there. Pretty dominant performance. He was the only leader. He led from flag to flag over Louis Foster, Kiffin Simpson, Hunter McIlroy, and Christian Rasmussen were the top five. Notably missing was Ernie Francis Jr. this week. I'm not sure why that was the case. I'm trying to see out of curiosity if Ernie Francis is still around. Yeah, he's current standing. So he was talked about in the preview for Indy NXT for the road course, 2 of the 3 races this season, 65. So unless he was racing Trans Am or something, I have no idea what the heck was going on there. Supercross, as I mentioned, was won by Chase Sexton to end the stadium Supercross part of the season. Chase Sexton gets his first 450 championship, as essentially by default, with the injuries suffered by the riders, both Eli Tomac and Cooper Webb. But you have to be there when it counts, and he was there, and he did what he needed to do to get it. He won the race. He won and got the whole shot and led the entire race. Won over Aaron Plessinger and Justin Hill. Adam Cianciarulo and Dean Wilson were the top 5. The final points standings see Chase Sexton win the championship by 33 over Eli Tomac. Tie for third between Cooper Webb and Ken Roczen. Justin Barsha finished 5th. Jason Anderson, Aaron Plessinger, Justin Hill, Adam Cianciarulo, Dean Wilson round out the top 10. So in 250 Supercross, Hunter Lawrence wins the championship over his brother Jet by 22. Hayden Deegan, Max Anstey, RJ Hampshire round out the top 5. In 250 West, Jet Lawrence, of course, gets the championship by 39 over RJ Hampshire. Trying to look for the standings in 250 East. They don't show them here, but whatever. That's fine. The brothers won the 250 titles, so good for them. We'll preview F2 and F3 at Imola. First, we'll start with F3. We have the point standings leading into the racing at Imola. Bortoletto up by 20 points on Gregoire Saucy and 30 points on Boganovic and Gabriel Mini. Points basically from 3rd to 8th or 3rd to 9th is only 9 points. So that'll be something to look at this round here at Imola. There's going to be racing 3 weeks in a row, Imola, Monaco, and Barcelona. So it'll be a big part of what could determine a lot of things here early in this championship before they take a break and then race a couple of rounds. They'll run 4 times in the month of July before taking the summer break and then coming back for Monza to end their season. In Formula 2, standings going into this weekend's race at Imola, Teo Pocher has a 3-point lead on Frederick Vesti. Ayumu Iwasa is 7 points back in 3rd. Oliver Bierman, Kushmini are, 24 points back, tied 4th and 5th. And we'll see how some of the American and Indian drivers do this weekend at Imola. F1 Academy will be racing at Barcelona. Racing, we brought them up last week, talked about them. The F1 Academy series. The standings going in after 2 races. Marta Garcia leads by 26 points over Hamda Al-Kabasi and Nerea Marti. Third, Bueller. Fourth, Hamda Al-Kabasi. Fifth, and Bianca Bustamante in sixth. Abby Pulling seventh. Those are the drivers that have had decent point scores so far. After this weekend at Barcelona, they'll take a month off before they go to Zandvoort. So we'll see how that goes for the ladies. Supercars at Simmons Plains. Supercars at Simmons Plains. Repco Supercars Championship. The threat of angular new mindset. Since they already have the advantage anyway. I'll start on Friday, of course, for the Tasmania Super Sprint, and then they'll wait a month before Darwin, the Repco Supercars Championship, current point standings. I don't know. There's championship points going in. Brody Kostecki has a 100-point lead over Chaz Mostert. Shane Van Gisbergen further 36 points back. Will Brown, Kostecki's teammate, is in fourth. And Brock Feeney, Van Gisbergen's teammate's in fifth. Mostert's the only Ford amongst that group of 5. The rest of them, of course, are Chevys. David Reynolds, Cam Waters, both in Fords. Brad Jones racing with Andre Heimgartner. Will Davison in the Shell V-Power Ford. Jack LeBrock, Truck Assist Racing, Camaro. We'll see if some guys like Anton De Pasquale, who's had a really rough start to the season, can go and turn things around. Some of these other guys, James Courtney, Thomas Randall. I think those are a couple of people. Nick Perkat's had a nightmare start to the season as well. So we'll see what some of those guys can do in the Fords after what has been a pretty brutal start to their season. And then last but not least, we'll get an NHRA. The points as it stands for NHRA going to the Route 66 Nationals. The Gerber Glass and Collision Route 66 Nationals. Pro Stock Call Out. Times in 2019. Pro Stock Call Out. Given Pro Stock. Both Nitro classes and Pro Stock motorcycles. So it'll be a full event. You'll have no top alcohol dragster this weekend, but you'll have all 4 pro classes plus pro mod, their Mountain Motor Pro Stock, Factory Stock Showdown, all at Route 66 Raceway. Top Fuel, Steve Torrance leads by 35 points over Justin Ashley. Leah Pruitt, Austin Prock, and Brittany Force rounding out the top 5. Antron Brown coming off a win recently there in 6th. Funny car, Matt Hagan's been dominant, but DeJoria is only 58 points back in 2nd. Robert Height, Ron Capps, Chad Green, the top 5. There in Pro Stock, Dallas Glenn has an 81-point lead on Matt Hartford. Troy Coughlin Jr., Derek Kramer, and Cameron Caruso, the winner at Phoenix. round out the top 5 in that class. And then in Pro Stock Motorcycle, Gage Herrera's had a great start to his rookie campaign. Vance and Hines Suzuki rider, leading by over 100 points on Matt Smith, Eddie Krawick, Angie Smith, and Steve Johnson. And we'll see what happens with that if he can go and win another race here this coming weekend. All right, so moving on to preview, I guess you said that we should try to read this, so I'm going to go first, I guess. The Formula One Qatar Airways Gran Premio del Made in Italy del Emilia Romagna 2023. Otherwise known as the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, otherwise known as the San Marino Grand Prix, that race at Imola, whatever you want to call it. It's a standard weekend where you have 3 practice sessions, 2 on Friday, 1 on Saturday leading up into qualifying, and then the race will be at the regular Euro time, which will be a 9 a.m. Eastern time start for us here, both Josh and I. Honestly, picking the Red Bulls have won every race this year. You're kind of hoping for a miracle to think somebody else would win. Since they've returned to Imola, Hamilton won in 20, and that was with some kind of sketched stuff going on for him. The last 2 years, Max Verstappen has won at Imola. So I guess I don't know who went first last week, but you want to go first, Josh?
Yeah, sure. I think obviously think Verstappen probably wins this race. I mean, he's won the race the last 2 years, and I don't think it's going to change. But beyond that, I mean, Sergio Perez finished second in this race last year after starting third. So, I mean, yeah, let's go Red Bull 1-2, and that leaves that for third, who can finish in third here. And I'm gonna go with George Russell finishing third place on the podium. We'll see what kind of changes Mercedes. They're a little bit behind on their performance this year overall, especially with Lewis. But let's see if they can make any changes here that can lead to a possible podium here. So backing the Mercedes and George Russell here, but should be an interesting one. I mean, obviously not really, but in terms of the team's performances, obviously I think Alonso is probably going to do well again. Surprising start, being the oldest driver in the field to this season this year, and everything. And I mean, essentially taking over for Vettel, and surprising start to the year for him. See if he can keep it up. I'm curious about Ferrari. Obviously, been wildly inconsistent, and Leclerc is admitting that his confidence is beginning to wane in the team. So, or at least this year right now. So curious how they bring their piece to the track, and if they can bring him a better car that can perform. Obviously, and of course, already brought up Mercedes, and I want to see how does Hamilton do, and also of note, Yuki Tsunoda finished in this 7th in this one last year, and it's done pretty well, and probably one of the worst cars of the field this year. So, curious to see how those drivers do this year, and what they're able to do. So we'll see how it happens, but obviously probably going to be a very boring race. With Verstappen probably winning and leading every lap just like he did last year.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go the other way. I'll just go with Checo. I figure Fish Lips wins, but for the sake of going different, I'll go with Checo, Fish Lips in 1 and 2. My third place finisher will be Carlos Sainz in a Ferrari because it is essentially a home game for the Tifosi for Ferrari. They want to actually make good on what has been a pretty brutal start to their season. I mean, if Mercedes and this, what people are trying to call a silver bullet with their new upgrade can make up a lot of this deficit that they've had for over a year, I think a podium definitely is in the cards, but I'm not banking on that, at least initially. I feel like it's going to be a couple of Grand Prix before we really know. I think going to Barcelona is where we might really see the true potential there of the Mercedes, but I'm hoping it'll help. It would be for the betterment of the series because they need all the help they can get. In terms of Ferrari also wanting to do something in the season, putting their name out there with the competitiveness. And then you can't forget Fred Alonso. He's won there before many years ago, beating one Michael M. Schumacher in the process. Can he bring it back in time and win another one? Probably not, but he's been up there all year. So somebody to look at currently. Aston Martin second in the Constructors' Championship. So can't count him out at the moment. Alonso third in the World Championship drivers standings. Hamilton, Sainz fourth and fifth. George Russell sixth. Charles Leclerc seventh. Stroll, Lando Norris, and Pierre Gasly. Of course, McLaren's another one that's going to be bringing an upgrade this weekend, so we have to see what they do as well. I mentioned the constructors' standings. 6 points separate Aston Martin and Mercedes. Mercedes is 18 points ahead of Ferrari. And then there's like a crater between Ferrari and everybody else. The Indianapolis 500, they want to go and bring up, I want to find the entry list. Indianapolis 500 entry list 2023. So Front Stretch has it. Okay. So we'll go on frontstretch.com to go and see who it is. Well, it's the IndyCar. Okay, so 34 cars for 33 spots, as I mentioned. We'll go through, what is it called? 6, 7, 8, 9 former winners of the Indianapolis 500, starting, of course, with Helio Castro-Neves and the 06 for AutoNation Sirius XM. Alexander Rossi, driving for McLaren, driving one of those throwback McLaren paint schemes. I think he's running the Lone Star JR one. Or no, he's running the. I think he's running the. He is running the Lone Star JR one. Pat O'Ward's running the one as an ode to the McLaren F1 that won Le Mans. And then Felix Rosenquist is the one that actually has the cool one, which is the Marlboro themed one, which is like Ayrton Senna. Marcus Ericsson, the defending winner of the Indianapolis 500. Scott Dixon, the guy who should have won the Indianapolis 500 last year, his teammate. Takuma Sato, a two-time winner of the Indianapolis 500, driving for Ganassi, Will Power. Ryan Hunter-Reay, driving for Dreyer and Reinbold Racing this year. He'll be teammates with Stefan Wilson. No Sage Karam this year for the first time in a while. What's it called? Simon Pagenaud, one for Penske with Menard as a sponsor back a few years ago. Antoine Canon, and what he says is going to be his last Indianapolis 500, but I'll believe it when I see it. Then you have, in terms of rookies, there's 4 rookies listed. R.C. Enerson, who has tried to make this race a couple of times with lower funded efforts, tries again with Able Motorsports. Stingray Robb for Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware. Benjamin Peterson for AJ Foyt Racing. And Agustin Canapino for Juncos Hollander. Drivers doing a one-off in this race. Marco Andretti doing his one race of a year. Andretti Herta with Marco and Kerr Bagajanian. Enerson would count in that list. Tony Kanaan, Ryan Hunter-Ray, and Stephen Wilson are all one-offs. Catherine Legg will be driving for Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing. Other than that, everybody else is essentially a regular on the IndyCar circuit. So, yeah, I mean, I guess if we take Texas as a baseline for who may or may not have issues at Indianapolis, then Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing might be in some trouble, trying to go and be competitive, trying to qualify on the first day and get themselves locked in within that 11 through 30 range, which is where everyone wants to be, so they don't have to run the qualifying again on Sunday. Top 12 will run for the pole, and cut down to the fast 6. And then there will be, they'll have the last chance for the bumping, and then they'll have the Firestone Fast 6 on Sunday to determine the first 2 rows of the Indianapolis 500 in qualifying. Then they'll have a practice on Monday, carb day practice on the Friday before, and then we'll see the race start at 12 noon our time, 11 o'clock a.m. Indianapolis time. So that'll be the case there. Yeah, so I mean, I think that looking at the results from Texas, if we're going to use that as a measuring stick, then I do believe that it could be a bit of a struggle for them, for the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan team. There were issues for some of the rookies. Stingray Robb had issues. The cars from AJ Foyt Racing were not exactly great either. So those are some to look at. A team that did well was Juncos Hollander, so that might be something to look at. The Chevys were pretty strong. Top 2 were Chevys, dominated the race. Alex Palou, David Malukas, Scott Dixon. So 3 Hondas there. Malukas has made his name on the ovals early in his career. Now, Hondas have been better at Indianapolis in recent years. So curious on your take in regards to who you look at might be in a position of bother come this weekend for qualifying, Josh. Maybe I guess we can go and make picks for pole. I'm not really sure about speed, but we can pick who we believe is going to win the pole or the front row. Maybe you can just go for the front row. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, no, I'm Yeah, I was trying to look at that, but I mean, it's going to be interesting, yeah, based on speed here, who can really qualify up front for the Indianapolis 500. I mean, if we really think about it, I mean, I think in terms of who could be up there, I mean, you got to look at McLaren. Obviously, they've had really good pace the last couple of years, and of course, this year at Texas, they were really good up front. In terms of speed, Rosenquist was good. Award Rossi, and of course, Tony Kanon's probably going to, which is supposed to be his final 500, probably going to want to make the Fast 12 there. So I definitely think they have a shot at winning the pole there. Um, I think of course Penske I think is going to be up there as well. They're always figuring out something and figuring out where uh, to get an advantage and how to get an advantage, get that unfair advantage, as Mark Donahue used to say back in the day. Of course, you have Andretti, always formidable to have a few in the top 12. Come on pole day, so it's definitely very very interesting to see. Um, and also, I mean, based on speed, I mean, if we're really going to say who's maybe somebody to really start worrying about, is think maybe uh, Carpenter Racing, of course. They've been very good at Indianapolis for many years, but if we went on qualifying speed alone from Texas, I mean, they were not really good, and they qualified in the back half of the field. So that's something you consider. But they've been another team that has always brought good pieces to the Indianapolis 500 on qualifying day and on pole day. So that's something to look at here as we get into later in the week. How qualifying pace is going to be for some of these guys. Also, Helio Castroneves, obviously he's former winner 4 times. But again, him and Simon Pagenaud did not do well based in how they did in Texas. Of course, the one time that he did win the 500 back in 21 with Michael Shank, started on 8th. Last year for Elio, last year started in 27th and finished in 7th. So we'll see how they're able to do this year. And the 500, of course, last year qualified poorly, but still made a chance to get up towards the top 10. Didn't win, but still finished in 7th. So, and of course, Ganassi been fast as well to start the year on the ovals. Dixon second, and then Pillow and 6th and 7th for Sato and Pillow. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting for sure. Of course, with everybody now here at the Indianapolis 500. So really looking forward to seeing how they do in qualifying this year, and who can qualify and make pole, who's on the front row here. I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna roll, go chalk here and say Scott Dixon qualifies on pole this weekend at the Indianapolis 500. I'm gonna say Pato Award qualifies in second, and then we'll go. I'm gonna go with Joseph Newgarden qualifying third.
Going out there on a limb based on recent trends with Newgarden. Of course, Scott Dixon, a 5-time pole sitter in the Indianapolis 500, trying to tie the great Rick Mears with 6 poles in the Indianapolis 500. Trying to see if they show Mears on this list. I have to go and bring that up. Just do it that way. That'll be the easiest way. No, because they only show, when they show IndyCar, they're showing IndyCar based on whatever the IRL. Go through the kart days. Yeah, so that'll be these days right here. USAC Champ Car Series stats at this track. Go and load that. Polls. just to confirm, it is, Rick Mears has 6 poles. He finished every time he finished in the top 10, it was a top 5, 9 top 5s and top 10s, 4 wins, and 15 starts at the Speedway. Average start of 4.5, average finish 11.2, even with the 4 wins. AJ Foyt in 35 starts had the 4 wins, 10 top 5, 17 top 10s, 4 poles. Average start of 10.1 and average finish of 13.4. Mario Andretti, average start of 8.7, but average finish of 17.9. Can talk about how many close calls he had at Indianapolis. Going into the IRL field, in terms of the NTT IndyCar series, as I mentioned, Scott Dixon has 5 poles, so if he can go and do it this year, you tie Rick Mears. The average, get the active drivers. The average start for active drivers, Rinus VeeKay, 3 starts at Indy with an average start of 3.3, so he's been on the front row. He's been on the front row twice and started 4th in his rookie year. Alex Palou, average start of 5th in 3 starts. Of course, one was with Dale Coyne. Helio Castroneves, as Josh mentioned, 4-time pole sitter, 4-time winner, or 4-time pole sitter, 4-time winner, average start of 9th, better finishing average, which is always great. Marcus Ericsson actually has an under 10 average start, along with Will Power, Antoine Canon, just over 10, 10.1. So for me, I agree. I feel like Scott Dixon, he's due to win this race again, which I'm not talking about. That's for next week who we're going to pick and all that. But after last year, I feel like he probably feels like he's owed one. But I do believe he's going to tie Rick Mears with 6 poles at Indianapolis. Pick Scott Dixon. Then on to go into the rest of the front row, the point you made about Tony Kanaan in his supposedly final Indy 500, I say he'll be the fastest McLaren, and he'll start 2nd in the Indianapolis 500. And then in 3rd will be I'll go a little out there with this one. I'm going to go and say David Malukas. So Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, and David Malukas. So we both have the same pole sitter, have a little bit of different McLaren person, and then a different outside pole sitter. But I guess we'll find out who is right or what happens in qualifying. Hopefully the weather, of course, is in favor of the teams so that they can get all of qualifying in. I would say that we both probably think that RC Enerson is the most likely person to go home. So that really isn't no offense to RC Enerson, but coming in as a one-off with a new team, showing up to the Speedway, still building the car. Some of these other teams have multiple cars, so we'll see how that all works out for them. All right, last thing we have to go into, picks and preview the trucks and the Cup All Star Race. So before we get into the Cup and the history aspect, let's talk about the Tyson 250 for the trucks. It's a 34 40 teams for 36 spots in this field. You have Bubba Wallace driving again in the the one truck for Tricon. Norm Benning actually is trying to show up, so he's probably in the fight to qualify. Sauter, yeah. Kyle Larson's going to be driving the 7 for Spire. Look through some of these other ones. Josh Williams driving for AM Racing after they took a week off in the 22. Chris Hacker will be driving the 30 for On Point Motorsports. Let's see, Reum talking about failing to qualify, but he was running used tires for whatever that's worth. Ross Chastain will be in the 41 for Nice. William Byron in the 51 for Kyle Busch Motorsports. There will be 2 HendrickCars.com Chevys out there. Christopher Bell will be driving a second Hattori Racing truck. The number 61, former Truck Series champion. Of course, there. Byron should have been a Truck Series champion, but of course, as Josh mentioned, they blew an engine at Phoenix and got knocked out. Connor Jones making another start for Thor Sport. Akinori Ogata for G2G. Trying to make the show there as well. So 40 for 36. I'll go first here. I'm gonna go with William Byron to win this race. I think I went with him last week. That didn't work, or sometime recently in a truck, but I think he's going to win this one. He's one of the few guys I think has experience on this track, actually racing on it from back in the day. I might be mistaken, but definitely when you consider his sim prowess as well, probably could play a role in what happens there. So I say Will Byron gets a win. My wild card selection for the race itself, it's definite opportunity. 30, 21, so 22. I count Jake Garcia because he's basically run everything, so it's 11. My wild card pick for this weekend, I'm going to jump ahead of Josh. I'm going to pick Raja. He had a great end of the race there at Darlington. Short tracks are his bread and butter. This track is really rough, similar to Darlington. Who knows what can happen there if you can get good track position. Possibly could get that first Truck Series win. So picking the 51 to win and taking Raja Karuth as my wild card. What say you, Josh, in regards to the Tyson 250?
Well, if you're going to pick a Cup driver who's driving the HendrickCars.com 51, then I'll have to go on the other end and pick a Cup driver driving the HendrickCars.com number 7, Kyle Larson, replacing the injured Alex Bowman this weekend. So, obviously, Kyle Larson, never been to North Wilkesboro. I don't think anybody has, except for maybe some of the older guys or anybody that raced late models in the mid 2010s when they briefly revived North Wilkesboro. So got to go with Larson here this weekend in the Truck Series. Wild card in this race. Let's see. Let's see how. Think we go outside here, top 20. Let's see how. I'm just gonna pull a name out of a hat here. Dean Thompson. Let's see how he can do it at North Wilkesboro this weekend. So can Tricon Garage got some Cup experience with Bubba Wallace here this weekend, of course, as a teammate, and Corey Heim, also another teammate who's been doing really well this year, and Taylor Gray teammates. Can this driver, Dean Thompson, make some headway as a wild card, potentially 21st in the standings? So we'll see if he can make something happen. Could happen at the first truck race in many years at North Wilkesboro.
Yeah, first time since '96, of course, and that leads into the All Star Race. The one thing, I mean, there's been plenty of memories over the years. What is it? Dale Earnhardt and Ricky Rudd got into it late back in 1990. Ricky Rudd gave it to Dale Earnhardt the way that he probably did, or 89. Got what he deserved, kind of similar to what it seems like what happened last week at Darlington between Chastain and Larson. And old Earnhardt wasn't so happy about it and probably believes that was the reason at that point that he lost the championship to Rusty Wallace, but I don't think that was the case. There have been other races there. I think Willie T. Ribbs, when he was trying to go and make it in Cup back in the mid 80s, went and took one of his starts at Wilkesboro, and that wasn't exactly the greatest situation for him. Going back into those old days, I mean, Darrell Waltrip, because he drove for Junior Johnson, and Junior Johnson's shop was right basically around the corner from the track, was home. They were pretty dominant there over the years. I remember, of course, Brett Bodine won his first career and only career Cup win there. Davey Allison won there in 1991. And was it in 1994, Jeff Bodine led every lap of the I don't know. I think he lapped the entire field. He didn't lead every lap, but he lapped the entire field. Jeff Burton led every lap of the race in New Hampshire back in 2000. But I think Jeff Bodine might have been the last person to lap the entire field in a race, and it was at North Wilkesboro in 1994. That was during the tire war days. He was on the Hoosier tires. 95, though, the next to last year of the racetrack existing in its previous form, was a big one, the fall race in September, because Ernie Irvan returned from his devastating accident at Michigan and was able to jump in a truck, started in the top 10, was up front, had issues, but he was up front. I think he led a couple laps in that race as well. And then in the Cup Series race, he started in the top 10, led in the Cup Series race, got a top 10 finish out of that one in the 88. So the origination of the 88 car at Robert Yates Racing was that race. Ernie Irvan was fast, doing it with one eye essentially, and beating a lot of them guys who had two fully functioning eyes, and he would do the same thing essentially for the rest of his career. That's probably one of the ones that was most meaningful in my fandom, being a young kid at that point. Didn't think that his favorite driver was going to live, and then to come back and not only, be able to race again, but race competitively, really made things feel a lot better. And there was so much cheering, and people were really happy to see Ernie Irvan come back and race again. In this case, of course, now, thanks to Dale Earnhardt Jr., thanks to Marcus Smith, they're going to be racing again at North Wilkesboro for the All Star Race. So 37 cars. There will be 3 people advancing out of the open. The open field is pretty weak. Corey LaJoie, Eric Almirola, Chandler Smith, J.J. Yaley, and a Rick Ware 15 Allmendinger, Harrison Burton, Justin Haley, Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland, Ryan Preece, Noah Gagson, Josh Berry in the 48, Ryan Newman. I thought he'd be because he didn't run full time last year or whatever. Some Keebler Gibbs, Ty Dillon, and Josh Balicki in the 78. So for me, I figure out of that crew, I mean, it's a pretty motley group here. I'm gonna say Ryan Preece wins the Open. Todd Gilliland finishes second, and the fan vote winner is Josh Berry by default because he's Earnhardt's guy. And they keep the thing nose clean, keep everything clean, so they can get that car in a race and get all four Hendrick Motorsports cars in the show. That's what I'm thinking for the Open. But do you have anything different there, Josh?
I mean, I think I can agree with you. Josh Berry being an Earnhardt guy, winning the fan vote. I could also see, Noah Gregson, being Noah Gregson potentially is also, quasi junior guy, of course, formerly. Could potentially win the fan vote there. That's certain, but I'm gonna go Josh Berry winning the fan vote as well. Hard to go against that one. I'm gonna go. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna go Ty Gibbs, winning the Open, and I'm gonna go with I'll go with AJ Allmendinger winning or not winning, but finishing second behind him here.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a little different. I figured Keebler and Allmendinger are going to be two cars. They're going to be up front as well. Determined by pit stops. That'll be the starting lineup will be determined by pit stops. So something to watch for on Friday. This week it's going to be a busy week at North Wilkesboro Speedway. A lot of late model action. Junebug is going to be racing in the Cars Tour
Wednesday night,
amongst other Cup Series drivers. So that's going to be a tough main to even make. So that'll be something to see. Harvick's going to be in that one. Brad Keselowski, Daniel Suarez, plenty of guys. So we'll move on to the All Star Race. 21 drivers eligible, counting everybody that won last year, and Brad Keselowski, who is a former winner of the All Star Race. Ryan Blaney, who is the defending winner of the All Star Race. I think, and based on everybody else, they've either won in the last they count everybody who won in 22 and everyone that's won in 23 so far. So Ross Chastain, Austin Cindric, Austin Dillon, Kevin Harvick. They didn't change his number to 29 on the entry list. Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Chase Briscoe, Chris Buescher, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace, Darrell Wallace Jr., William Byron, Eric Jones, Tyler Reddick, Ricky Stenhouse, Richard on episode 169. 69! And then Daniel Suarez rounds out the regular field. Josh, who do you see getting the win out of that group? Or maybe do you see one of those other guys that are advancing from the Open as a possibility? I figure we can make two choices here. We can pick somebody we are going to pick as a winner and just kind of a hedge instead of a wild card pick.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, with respect to that, I mean, it's really hard to see, especially, I mean, I know it's a short track and everything, but you got to double up if you won the Open and then you win the All Star. I mean, you have to have a really, really good car. And it's really tough to see any of those guys. I mean, of course, I mean it is Cup these days, and anything can happen. But you really have to have a good car to be able to um, go win the Open and then All Star and everything. And then obviously, if you really use up your car to win the Open, it's going to be really hard to go out and win the All Star race and everything. So, I mean, I think I'll just stick to the drivers in the field currently that could win, and I will go with Chase Elliott winning at North Wilkesboro. Of course, he's had experience here at North Wilkesboro racing in Pro All Star Series back in the day in 2010 here. I mean, I think so has Ryan Blaney, maybe Bubba Wallace, potentially William Byron, potentially as well. But of course, they've had a lot of testing here as well, so some of that experience may be made up. So I'll pick Chase Elliott as my pick, and wild card. I'll go Ricky Stenhouse as a wild card.
All right. So William Clyde Elliott, no Richard. For Josh, for me, get out of the open field. Trying to think of I'm trying to look at recent trends on short tracks as a way to kind of come up with is less than a mile oval west. Get rankings. Is that greater than? Yeah. Less average finish. That kind of fits what I was thinking. So, yep, go Larson. Larson coming off of wins at Richmond and at Martinsville, and had a car to win last week on a track where he's one of his best racetracks on the Cup circuit. I think Larson goes and gets another All-Star win. Larson to win, and my dark horse pick amongst that group. I mean, it's kind of hard to call it a dark horse pick, really, but based on recent history, not his history overall, but yeah, I'm gonna go and go with Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski, former winner of the All Star Race, somebody who has a wide range of experience. It would be a huge moment for him as a car owner to win the All Star Race, a lot like when Tony Stewart won the All Star Race back in 2009 for his first victory as a car owner. I think it would have a lot of meaning to him. He also is a history guy. He gets that piece, and being able to win at North Wilkesboro and getting that Moonshine Still trophy, I think would be one that old Baba Booey would like there. I mean, I think also you look at Blaney, as Josh mentioned, with these guys that ran the pro late models, albeit it was like 13 years ago, but still it's more experience than a lot of these guys have. Blaney's one. I mean, I don't know. I know Briscoe, some of his better runs this year have been on short tracks, so you never know. They've been pretty god awful most of the year, though. All right. So last but not least, Josh, we are going to go to you for the sim segment. Let us know what's going on in regards to all things iRacing and any other gaming, since there are other sims and games coming out here in upcoming weeks or been talked about in the news.
Yeah, as always, I mean, of course, mentioned it at the top of the show. The Indy 500 win a year ago. Now, almost coming up this weekend, of course. Best thing I ever did in sim racing, of course. I think, and being able to go out and do that, of course, pretty cool. And maybe hopefully one day we'll be able to do it again officially for iRacing. I mean, if we have to do it in a way where it's a private event and it's for money, I'm willing to do it like that. Otherwise, hopefully, they can figure something out. Obviously, it seems like Motorsports Games probably never going to come up with anything to release for IndyCar game. Highly, highly doubt it. Probably go out of business or something here pretty soon. So I'm going to go with, sticking with iRacing or any other, F1 23 or something like that for my racing games and Gran Turismo and all that stuff. But never would touch or buy anything that was produced by Motorsports Games, I think, unless somebody gave it to me for free, or if it was extremely discounted, less than $10, because then it would be worth buying at $10. But good moment last year, of course. But now this year, just doing regular iRacing stuff, of course. And we got the All Star Race coming up at North Wilkesboro, and never really raced North Wilkesboro in iRacing, actually, surprisingly, and gonna have to try it here this weekend and try to see, what we can do with it. Of course, NASCAR. Let's see, the Truck Series racing at North Wilkesboro, so that might be interesting. Surprisingly, they don't have cups. I don't know why they have Cup at Texas, but it's there at Texas for whatever reason. Maybe they're still stuck on last year's schedule, but for whatever reason, the Cup Series is at Texas for the All Star Race, for the week of the All Star Race, I should say, for whatever reason, and so is Xfinity. But the Truck Series, because the real life schedule, North Wilkesboro Speedway, so maybe you try trucks there. North Wilkesboro, have to buy North Wilkesboro to do that. Of course, otherwise, we've got Cars Late Model Tour at New Smyrna. Also, don't know why that one's not at North Wilkesboro to match the real life Cars Tour. Super Late Model Series as well. Don't know why that's not at North Wilkesboro. I mean, all of them should be really there. Super Late Models at Nashville and Cars Late Model Tour at New Smyrna. Not really sure why they're all at North Wilkesboro. Should just put them all there, but guessing it has some scheduled diversity or whatever, but that's okay. Let's see, Gen 4 Cup cars at Nashville Super Speedway, so that should be interesting as well. And low downforce cars, track that's very technical, should be interesting there. Let's see what else. Road course schedule got Touring Car Challenge at Laguna Seca, Formula V at Lime Rock Park, GT3 Ferraris at Oran Park. We've got Lime Rock Park in the Rookie Series for the Formula Fords. Should be interesting there. Let's see, we've got looking at the other things here, other series. Got GT4 Challenge at Laguna Seca. Let's see what else. GR86 at Zandvoort Series, circuit. IMSA Pilot Challenge Series at Laguna Seca. So a lot of Laguna Seca here on the schedule for some of these road racing series, which is a good track to race on. Indy Pros at VIR, very tough track to race at, of course. Got, let's see, open wheel. Yeah, we already talked about that one. Yes, Nürburgring, 24 hours of Nürburgring. I think maybe that's coming up. And I think it already happened this past weekend because Jimmy
it's
Broadbent.
It's coming up for the sim. It is. I think it may have been done, but I know that they're racing this weekend in the 24 hours.
Yeah, no, I know that the real life one's probably coming up, but I think the sim ones may have been done this past weekend, and I didn't. Well, I guess it's still there. The slot is still there, but I think the sim one was already done. I think this weekend because past weekend because Jimmy Broadbent was doing that. I saw I guess the clip, or not the clip, but the I guess the video link to that on his YouTube. So have to check that out. But uh, yeah, I think there's that on iRacing course. All the stuff happening on the regular with iRacing course. F123 getting closer to being released, and I think they had some uh, news on that as far as gameplay goes. Let's see if I can pull that up. Of course, they released some features. Yeah, everything you need to know about this year's Formula One game. They had, let's see, F123. See, a release date scheduled for June 16, so very, not too far away, about a month away or so. More predictable car handling, greater realism. I guess red flags for the first time since F1 2014. And now I guess there's a feature last year where you basically just had a bachelor pad or something, and you could like design your own home. They called it the F1 Life, I guess, in F1 22. And now this year there's some new hub or whatever called F1 World. Let's see, obviously the cover. They've got different versions of it. One with Champions Edition with Verstappen, and then the regular version that's got Lewis, Charles Leclerc, and Lando Norris on it. So should be interesting. EA Sports producing it, so obviously very very interesting. Compared to how they did before. I think it's still under Codemasters, the people that are ultimately developing it, but EA Sports is just owning them now, and they're ultimately the publisher. So be interesting to play this game and everything. So maybe look forward to buying it or waiting until it's on sale or something. But I'll definitely check it out this year, or maybe just buy it on PC instead, so I can use it with my wheel versus PlayStation with the gamepad and everything. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, sim racing, of course, as always. We'll definitely try to stream some trucks with North Wilkesboro or something like that. Never tried it before, so it'll be a new experience. I actually did try to do Darlington last week, but I think only lasted like 5 laps and I wrecked out, and it was definitely a lot tougher than I thought it would be. So a little bit of a miscalculation there. But as always, streams will be when I stream, be Twitch TV/usailor2. Go on there. Of course, you can go on there and see last year's Indy 500 win. So relive that experience. Of course, go on there and watch that. And of course, Twitch TV's /usailor2, and go on there and see all my stuff. And I'll be sure when I actually go live to post my streams there on Twitter and elsewhere. Of course, follow me, my Twitter at JP Huffine, and go on there and see all my takes and everything. Might have a take here in a minute after I end the show, and I saw the video. Darius Butler, former Indianapolis Colt, on defense, saying that F1's the best live experience you can get any sporting event. And I'm like, you lived in Indianapolis for 5 years with the 500 right next door. How do you not say that the 500 is the greatest thing ever? So I don't know, but everyone's allowed to have their own opinion, I guess. But we'll see. I have to watch this. Maybe I'll have a take on there. But of course, watch or see all my takes, JP Huffine on Twitter. And of course, you can watch our streams here and our YouTube videos at Gripshire Podcast on YouTube, and go on there and look at what we have in all our videos. Everything's up to date, so go on there and see our past shows and everything, and we'll be sure to have this one posted here soon.
Yep, as absolutely. We'll go and do what we can on my end. Finally, got the shows posted, so try to get this one out because one of my favorite shows, or two of my favorite shows of the year, are coming up. You can find us at Gripstrip Pod on Twitter. Find the show basically anywhere you get podcasts. You can get the Gripstrip Podcast. Find it at philipgmatthew.com. Amongst other places we shared on our server site is Podbean. Go and check out the Grid Talk podcast. Might end up making a hit on there, either for the review of the Parmigiano Reggiano Grand Prix or the Monaco Grand Prix preview. You can find me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter as well. So for that, with that, it's been a pretty loaded, long episode, so we'll call it quits here. For Josh, thanks as always for everything you do on the back end for the show and being my sidekick and my bro. And we'll be back next week for episode 170, which will be the greatest day in motorsports preview edition. And we'll have plenty to review: Indy 500 qualifying, the All Star Race, et cetera, the Formula One San Marino, and we'll go from there. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Like, subscribe. Let us know if you want to hear from certain people, and we'll see what we can do on our end to see if we can get them on here. So thank you. Take care. God bless, and goodbye.